Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Alyssa Colman. Alyssa is the author of The Tarnished Garden and The Gilded Girl, two middle-life fantasy novels about determination, spirit, and the magic of friendship. She's here today to talk about her newest release, Where Only Storms Grow. This gripping middle grade historical fiction novel is set during one of the most dangerous storms in American history. And listeners, you will not want to let these characters go. I can't wait to talk to her all about it, so we're going to get right to the episode. Alyssa, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Oh, I am too. This book, I just used one word, gripping, in the opening, but I have so many other beautiful adjectives that are going to come up when we talk
Well,
about your
thank
book
you.
today. But before we do, we always like to start with introductions here on the podcast. So I'd love to get to know you a bit better and learn about your backstory a bit of the journey you took through children's literature to releasing your newest book today.
Sure. It is starting to feel like a journey at this point. I always loved reading. I loved historical fiction in particular. I was that sixth and seventh grade kid writing fan letters to Anne Rinaldi when I was younger. I loved reading, but I never really thought it was a job. To
Yeah.
me, she was probably the only living author that I knew of. Most of the others I thought of were probably old or dead. Um, and I never heard back from her, which is so sad. Still remain a fan, and I love you, but um, I didn't really think of authors as people because of that. And it took years of, I wrote plays when I lived in New York for a while, and I just wrote mostly for fun until one day my husband said, I think you should write a book. You read books all the time. You love writing. Why don't you do it? And I felt like I had been hit by a bolt of lightning. I could still take you back to Washington, D.C. and point to the exact spot on the sidewalk I was standing when he said that because it really felt like I should try this.
Yeah.
So I signed up for some writing classes. I think, there's a big gap between loving books and knowing how to write one.
Right.
And so I signed up for classes and did some workshops and I really practiced. I wrote first another book that will never, not in a million years, be published. And I am okay with that. That was my practice novel. And but I got some great feedback and I met some wonderful people doing that. So once I knew how to write a book, I went and wrote what I think was a good book, which was The Gilded Girl, and that became my first debut book, which came out in 2021. It was followed up by The Tarnished Garden. They are a retelling of a little princess set in a Gilded Age school for magic, and then a retelling of The Secret Garden set in that same school, following a minor character from the first novel. So I had so much fun writing those, but my true love, as I said, has always been historical fiction. So I really wanted to get back to that, and I think that with the first two, I love fantasy novels. And maybe it was me cheating a little bit because I could do the historical research, but I could always wave my hands and say, well, it's different because of magic. But I wanted to do the real work. And so I wrote Where Only Storms Grow, which is pure historical fiction and required a lot of research, and I loved every minute of it.
Mm. I would love to know more about that because you do mention the research part in the wonderful note at the end of the book. I really felt like I was there. I felt like I had the dust cloth on. I felt like I was getting hit by the tumbleweeds. I was scared when I was slipping away from my brother. Like I was feeling it. I felt like I had such a insider look at that time period. What is your research process like?
It's I've talked to some wonderful authors. Laura Elliott, who writes as L.M. Elliott, gave me a crash course on how she does her historical research and how she has this amazing organizational system. And I aspire to be like her one day. I do enough research that I feel like I can see the period. And then as I write, I have a system where if it's a big detail that's going to impact the entire scene, I will pause and go research it. If it's a tiny detail, like at one point I got hung up on saying the plates and I didn't know what their plates were made out of. I was like, would they have metal plates? Would they have ceramic plates? What would they be eating
Yeah.
off of? And so in those tiny moments, I actually put star, 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 and then I put brackets and write what I need to research. And then on the days where I'm really tired, or sometimes after my kids go to bed, I'll just do a control find star, star, star and do those tiny bits of research. For that one, I got really hung up on it and I was doing all this research trying to figure out what their plates are made out of. And then I just realized I could just say the plates. So sometimes I do the research because it's really important, and sometimes I just want to know, and sometimes, despite my best efforts, I just can't figure it out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that I apologize for laughing, but that did make me smile. You're right. Sometimes we get hung up on the things and we can just name the things. But what a brilliant strategy. I mean, I feel like that's a great strategy for writing for children, but for writing anything of the thing that you know you need to do more of, but you can't get out of the flow and you don't want it to distract you. And those kinds of things are often better when your mind just maybe doesn't have the bandwidth for the writing and you can go back and find them and
Yeah.
still be productive and then keep moving. I love that. I love that
Well, thank
strategy.
you. Yeah, I love the research part, so I have to force myself to write sometimes and stop researching because I just love reading about the past.
Yeah. I know it's so easy to get lost in those stories, but you're using their stories to write your story. So you have to
Yes,
get yourself back on track more
I
than
have to get back in my own head. Yes.
so why this period of history? Actually, we haven't really told them what the period of history is yet. So let me backtrack. We have the book Where Only Storms Grow. Tell us, I'd love to hear it in your words. Tell us a little bit about the book, the where and the when it's set, and perhaps why that? Why did you choose that?
Sure.
What was the inspiration behind it?
So the story follows twins Hal and Joanna Stanton, who are growing up during the Dust Bowl. Um, the Dust Bowl was a period starting around 1931, ending in 1939, that was a particularly bad drought in the middle of the US. But it was more than that, really. During this period, the rains stopped, and it is an area that does experience periods of drought, but this was unlike anything that history or the world had ever seen before, because during the 1920s and as early as World War I, the US government encouraged farmers to plant up the high plains and the Great Plains. There was this whole now debunked theory that rain follows the plow, and they actually thought they could change the climate of the region by introducing agriculture. So these areas had just been, some grazing land, but mostly untouched grasslands for years and years and years, with these incredible type of grass called buffalo grass that the roots can go down 10 feet, and that really holds everything down. So the farmers came in, they planted it up, and they tore up all the topsoil, and then the stock market crashed in 1929 and the Great Depression began. And the price of wheat dropped to so low that it actually cost more to grow the wheat than you could make from growing it. So many farmers just lost their farms or up and walked away, and the topsoil was left bare. And when it stopped raining, it just up and blew away in these epic dust clouds. So the story follows Hal and Joanna as their family is suffering from the Dust Bowl. The story starts in 1935, and it begins with them caught in what is known as Black Sunday, which is the worst dust storm of all of 19 of all of the whole period, really. So many survivors remembered it as one of the worst days. People really thought it was the end of the world because it was that dark. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And then the story jumps back 3 months and talks about how they got there. Joanna has scoliosis and is in chronic pain and really feels like she's kind of the weak link of the family. Hal, on the other hand, is treated like he is this strong, capable kid who must obviously want to be a farmer, but he really wants to be a writer, and school is his haven. So when some tragedies befall the family and Hal has to drop out of school, it is his worst case scenario. And Joanna winds up working at the local field hospital that's helping people, and they both find their own strengths through these hard experiences that they're going through. And when that storm is bearing down, it falls on them to keep their family together and alive.
And now, listeners, you know why the word I chose in the beginning was gripping. I love the format. I love how you open up with that very important scene that really sets the stage. And I know you have this online, but listeners, if you do First Chapter Fridays, this book is perfect. First Chapter Friday, because you're instantly there and you can feel it hitting your face. You can feel the fear of being in the dark and the rope slipping off your waist as you're losing your twin. You could just feel it. But then when you get in the story, you realize that you're going to get this from Joanna's perspective and you're going to get it from Hal's. I love that back and forth. I love because it's still a chronological telling, but you get to switch and see what things felt like and sounded like and how they mattered to different characters while still being during that time. It's my favorite structure as an adult, and it's my favorite structure in middle grade. And it literally just propels you through the book. Like literally like the dust storm might come through. I think the reader just wants to keep going because
Oh,
you just get something new every little chapter, and I loved it.
thank you. It's really fun to write the back and forth like that. I enjoy it.
Yeah. And also, I think what you mentioned, I, as an adult who probably should know better, had that very surface understanding of the Dust Bowl. I don't, maybe it's because of my elementary school and what they taught. I don't know, but I thought,
Mhm.
yeah, it rained and it just got dusty. And as the story was unfolding, and especially as Hal was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Like it is falling on me. How do I do this? And I won't say what happens so that we can leave a little spoiler for the reader, but what he ends up finding out about this situation and how it was caused and how it could be better, I was finding out for the first time of what
Yeah,
that situation was like and how it was caused and how it could be better. And I really was like, wow, this was something that just, pun intended, blew me away as an adult that I didn't get and understand that. So I feel like there's such a opportunity for education. Like this is going to be a book that people just want to read because they get to sink into the stories. But I also see it as kicking off a lot of units of study, content study in classrooms for this time period.
that would be wonderful because it's definitely not something I learned in school either. It's something I really stumbled upon during the pandemic, and I I wasn't even intending to write a book about it. I just found it so fascinating. I was reading because I was reading, and what really kicked it off is I read an article about how it was the other time in history that Americans were asked to wear masks, and that
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
actually really effective. And I just was like, what? What? It was just a drought. Why would they do that? And then, kick off a what 6 year obsession now at this point where
Yeah.
I've been a very boring dinner party guest for the past 3 years, unless you wanted to hear about the Dust Bowl. Yeah, but it's fascinating. I mean, part of why I wrote about it is I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people who lived through it because I, I even feel with Kidlit that I softened some of how hard it really was. Like there were parts of it I left out that I didn't think kids wanted to hear about the all of the bugs that would come out of the walls after each dust storm, and I was like, oh no, I'm not getting into that.
I do
That's too
left that out
much.
for this
Yeah.
adult reader.
So, but it was not an easy time. And th- I mean, the toughness and grit it took to live through it, and also just the people who had to leave, that takes toughness as well.
Mhm. Let's talk about the character transformations that happen. Like each
Okay.
character is on a journey, right? As you already alluded to it, Joanna is struggling with chronic pain. She has scoliosis. And because of the time period, perhaps because of the particular doctor that's treating her, she feels like she's broken, that she's not enough, will never be enough, will never be able to contribute. And kind of has, as you mentioned, that weak link aspect of the family. And then you have How, who everyone wants to be a certain way and do the things and have everything taken care of, and he just wants to soothe his soul with a bit of poetry, up
Yeah.
up in the barn. And they both have these conflicting views of themselves and other people looking at them that so wonderfully, starts to shift and change. Of course, among something very hard. That's where they're finding out what they're really made of. But I'd love to pick your brain a bit about how and why those two characters went on the journeys that they did, because they both touched my heart, especially
Sure.
Joanna's.
Yeah. Where do you want me to start?
Let's, well, what made, I guess I'd love to know, like let's start with Joanna.
Okay.
Why scoliosis? Why that angle as a character?
It's actually something that I have. So I wore a back brace as a kid, and I, to me, I didn't know anyone else with scoliosis. I didn't know anybody else who was going through it, and it felt very lonely.
Yeah.
And it also, because you're a kid and you don't have this historical context, there was often this feeling of like, I am the first person in the world that this has ever happened to. And it's not a new affliction at all. I mean, records of it go all the way back to the ancient Greeks. And yet there really hasn't been a true treatment until recently. Even when I was creating Joanna's story, I reached out to some experts and historians in the field of scoliosis research, and they confirmed she really wouldn't have had any options.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted her to go through something I went through, where when I got my scoliosis diagnosis, I'd been doing gymnastics and all these things, and everything just stopped.
Mhm.
And some of that was me. Some of that was my fear of hurting my back or not feeling like I could do things. Some of that was literally my own limitations that I for gymnastics, I couldn't do a back walkover, so I couldn't advance any further and I had to stop. Um, but Joanna, on the other hand, is told to stop everything. And I wanted someone who feels like they're broken to see that there's still a lot of life left.
Yeah.
And one thing about you does not define the entirety of you. And so that's a lesson that she learns. And she meets another character who has scoliosis, who shows her another way to be strong. And so I wanted her to go on this journey where she saw that we're all full of multitudes.
Mhm. I got teary at that part in the hospital where she realized, oh my gosh, this amazing, strong nurse has what I have. This is
Mhm.
possible for me. Oh, I could just feel it. It was such a moving moment. And in the end, it's so hard. I don't want to give spoilers, but she ends up playing a very pivotal role in helping her family. Right?
Mhm.
Almost because of that, because she is so observant, because she is trying to help. Oh,
Yeah,
when she found,
Joanna's superpower becomes her empathy because
yeah,
she's able to look at other people from having gone through this whole experience herself. And that's a wonderful moment when she realizes that being able to connect to other people is what sets her apart.
Yeah. And then eventually the people around her are starting to see it too. They're
Hmm.
very surprised by the changes that are happening, especially her twin. What a beautiful bond. That's tested at times, just like sibling
Hmm.
and real life twin bond are. But then you have Hal, who is
Yes.
expected to be the farmer and the worker bee and take everything over. And he's got a side to himself that he doesn't want to show. Perhaps he
Yeah.
did a bit and got a little pushback, and so now he really keeps it close. But tell me about the choices you made for him and his love of poetry and words, which, by the
Yeah.
way, his poems are in the book. And
Yes.
they're
That was so much fun. So initially when I started writing it, Hal was a runner and he ran from everything. And I realized it just wasn't working.
Mhm.
And then I had a chance meeting at a librarians conference. I was talking to Daniel Nayeri, and I told him I was working on a project about the Dust Bowl. And he and I then proceeded to completely geek out about the Dust Bowl for about 10 minutes. And I found out he's fascinated by it too. And we were just like swapping facts back and forth to the complete bafflement of everyone around us. Um, and he pointed me to a book of poems um, called Black Sunday. And I started reading those, and they're by Benjamin Myers, I should say, who is the poet laureate of Oklahoma. And I started reading them, and in these just stripped down experiences put together through words, I just found so much emotion. And I realized that how needed to unknot all these feelings. And running wasn't unknotting anything. He needed to be picking this apart in poems as well. And at that point, I had the teacher at the beginning of the book reading to them from Emily Dickinson. And she reads Hope is the Thing with Feathers, hoping to try to inspire her students. And I decided that instead of running, Howe was going to go up to her and ask to borrow the book. And his journey starts there with this act of bravery and speaking up. And initially the teacher says, I didn't think you liked the poem. He says, just because I didn't like it doesn't mean I don't agree with it.
Yes.
And so he then begins to try to understand himself by putting it down on paper. And even when he has to leave school, it's kind of the solace that helps him through all these times he's mending broken fences and digging out the yard yet again after the latest storm.
I'm glad you mentioned that part because one of the other themes, at least for me as a reader, that comes up in the book is, this idea of not staying inside yourself. Like, it's okay
Hmm.
to ask for help. It's okay
Yeah.
to find your people and to rely on them. It's okay to have this collaboration and this teamwork. And that moment that you talked about really was a first step for him to
Hmm.
reach out like that, which, there are other moments in the book where that happens, but there's two quotes that I pulled out. They're on sticky notes on my desk now related to that theme. Is it okay if I read two of them aloud?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. The first one that I loved is it goes to show if you bury your troubles in the ground, they tend to grow. That one right there. I'm a trouble barrier.
Oh, no.
Okay, that quote is for me. But then the one that really got me was this. Asking for help's not giving up. It's refusing to.
Yes.
Oh, if we could all just learn that lesson, asking for help isn't giving up, it's refusing to. That one went straight to my heart. I know that is going to resonate for a lot of listeners. And when you read the story, listeners, and you get the context around it, you'll love it even more. But thank you for those beautiful words that are now preserved forever. I have a notebook with my favorite quotes
I
of the
have the
books
same.
that I
Yes.
read, my little Florilegia collection, and those are the two newest in it because they're just,
Oh, I'm so honored. Thank you.
yeah, just such an important lesson for us
Yeah.
to learn. And if readers can think about this in middle grade, versus
Yeah.
the age I am, then that's good.
Oh, yeah. And middle grade is just you're keenly aware of your own self and I asked a friend one time who's a psychiatrist who works with middle grade kids to define the essence of middle grade for me in a single sentence. And he said, simultaneously feeling ahead of and behind your peers.
That's
And I I really think like if we could learn to ask for help and that asking for help is not an embarrassment and it's not failure, I think so many more kids would be able to thrive.
good. I agree. It'd be such a gift for them to know from a younger age. And then they
Mhm.
can share it with the, older caregivers in their lives and help them
Yes.
learn that.
Yes, I think that's definitely some of we grown-ups could use that lesson
Yes.
as well.
Yes. Now you mentioned in the back of the book, there is a wonderful author's note where you talk about some of the things that you've mentioned about the time period. But one thing you said, you spoke directly to readers here, at least in this sentence, and you said, readers, please don't let one thing about you fully define who you are. Find what inspires your strength.
Mhm.
Such a beautiful sentiment. I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about that and perhaps what your hope is for the book or your hope for readers who are reading this book.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Joanna thinks of herself as a patient and as broken, and Hal thinks of himself as a farm boy. And they both really struggle to break out of that mentality. But Joanna discovers she's a nurse and she's empathetic and she's a caregiver and she is strong. And Hal discovers that it's okay to have a softer side and it's okay to use his voice and that people will listen. And they both learn these incredible things about themselves that, had they not been tested, they may not have found out. So I hope that young readers will see that they don't have to be one thing. They don't have to just be a jock or a reader or a gymnast or a dancer. They can be many things. We writers excel at this because we have to become many experts of everything we write about. Plus, many of us have day jobs and lives outside of our books. It's okay. In fact, it's great to be many things. And I hope that readers can look at this and think adversity is not always a bad thing. It will help me find more about myself. And that even if you're going through a hard time, there's always hope on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what a beautiful way to wrap that up. Oh, thank you for that. Where can listeners find you online so that they can get their hands on this book and also dive into your backlist of books that we talked about at the top of the episode?
Sure. So I have a newsletter. If you go to alyssacolman.com, there's no E in Coleman, so ALYSSACOLMAN. I have a newsletter. I call it my occasional newsletter. I try to send it out at least once a quarter, but I promise not to spam you. I may be sending a few more just because the book is coming out in August and I'm having more events going on. But I try to do giveaways and fun things, and I also have a creativity corner in it. So in every newsletter, I try to give you a prompt or some little project to work on, and I keep it open-ended so that you can use it for writing, painting, drawing, whatever you want to do, whatever is your medium of creativity, just something to kick it off and get you thinking.
Oh, I love that. I love that you make that open-ended so that we can bring whatever our thing is, which fits with the message that you're telling us from the book,
Yes,
and make
exactly.
it
You
our
don't
own.
have to be one thing. Even if you love books, even if you love to write, you may read it and think, I think I'm going to draw this one.
Yeah. Oh, nice permission slip.
Oh, thank you. I try.
Well, I will make sure to put that, your website and the link to the occasional newsletter in
Yes.
there.
I am also on
Show notes.
Instagram
Okay.
at Alyssa B. Coleman, but I am trying to not be on social media as much. It's a distraction from writing, and I'm really trying to focus right now.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I will put that in the show notes too, especially because we're often not doing the writing. And so we love scrolling your feeds to seeing what you're writing about.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. I adored the book. I so appreciate all the background information and the inside scoop I have into it. And I know people are going to love it. I'm so grateful to be part of your launch. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. And I hope that your listeners enjoyed the conversation and the book.
Me too. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you loved what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.